Congratulations. I was just telling you, I saw this originally in Cannes, when it was just debuting, when you were just going with it. It was amazing. Then I saw it again here. It's playing, interestingly, I guess, everywhere around the world, when you see this with audiences. And here, this is your first English language film. So what's it like playing here in Hollywood?
No, it's great, of course. I mean, this is the first time I'm back in LA since The Square was nominated for Best Foreign Language Film, and thank you
for The Square.
Yeah, but it was really pleasant experience then, and it's so great to come back and experience the audience culture you have here in the U.S. If you compare that with the audience culture that is in Scandinavia, like people are more leaned back and sitting like this and being very critical. And here you understand that participating is a way of creating a great show. And I think that is something that I'm actually trying to encourage the distributors and the cinema owners in Sweden, that we have to try to adapt and try to create that kind of audience culture in Sweden also.
Yeah, it's so great to see your stuff, from Force Majeure to The Square to this. Of course, you did a lot before that too, but all of it has a certain thread to it. You love dealing with human behavior in all of these films. That seems to be a theme that you're in love with here.
Yeah, I guess I think I look for dilemmas. Dilemmas is very efficient way of trying to point out the things about our behavior. And if you break down what a dilemma is, I mean, a dilemma is when the characters have two or more options, but none of the options are easy, and all of the options are going to have consequences. And it's basically a little bit like sociology. I'm a fan of sociology, because sociology is putting a spotlight on the context of a situation rather than pointing fingers towards the individual and putting blame on the individual. So with sociology, we can have an understanding for why our behavior is in the way we act, and why we sometimes tend to do things that we are not very proud of. And it's just a certain way of giving knowledge about our behavior that I love the approach of sociology.
What sparked this one? I know, like, the Square was set in the world of art and museums and things, and Force Majeure gets a ski resort, and this one here in fashion. Was there a particular thing in your head that you wanted to sort of like get into the world of fashion here? Male model, female models, all of that?
Well, the reason that I wanted to do something in the fashion world from the beginning was because when I met my wife 8 years ago, it was actually here in LA, she's working as a fashion photographer. So I got very curious about her profession. I wanted to hear everything about her profession. And she told me very interesting details about, for example, how the different fashion brands are marketing themselves, the strategies they have, like the H&M and Balenciaga, and how you can tell that the H&M models are more often smiling. And then the more expensive the brand gets, that smile disappears from the face of the models. And it's almost like when you look at the most expensive brands, that they are looking down on the consumer. And I thought it said something about like how we position ourselves with the clothes that we are buying. So it's really like we're looking on a scale of a hierarchy, and looking at the group that we are connected to, and trying to find a camouflage so we can fit into the right group. And then I also got very interested in, she told me about the models, and for example, that the male models are earning like 1/3 or 1/4 of the female models, and quite many of the models are coming from working class. And I thought it was an interesting aspect that beauty can become a currency where you can climb in class society. And one story that was about a friend of my wife. When he was 19 years old, he was working as a car mechanic. And he got street casted in Hamburg. Hamburg is the city in Germany where the fashion industry is located. And he got street casted. He got the question, do you want to work as a model? And he's like, yeah, sure, I can try that. And 2 years later, he's one of the best paid male models in the industry. And all of a sudden he had gotten used to a certain kind of lifestyle that he couldn't have access to where he came from or the kind of profession he had before. When he is up there on the top, he does a perfume campaign that if I would show it to you, you would probably recognize this guy because it became very famous, those images. It was Peter Lindbergh that did that campaign. But when he's up there on the top, he realized, oh my God, I'm starting to lose my hair. So he's losing his currency. And the drop to go back to start to work as a car mechanic again is kind of painful to do. So he went to his agent, and he talked to his agent, and the agent looked at this hair issue, and he said, okay, maybe you have 2 more years working as a model. But we also have another problem than not only the hair. The other thing is that you're so connected to this perfume brand that made you famous. So in order to make you get jobs on the same level, we need to rebrand you. And my suggestion in order to rebrand you is that you get together with a famous girlfriend. And this guy, he was a little bit of a romantic guy, he said, but I want to be in love, So for me, it was a complete new thing, this with the branded couple context. And I was a little bit fascinated because I was pitching this film and the idea about the film. Okay, we have Carl and Jaya, and they are a branded couple. And when I pitched it to people in my generation and then older people, I'm born in the 70s, then the people that I pitched it to, they were like, oh my God, but how horrible a branded couple, but what about love? And then when I was pitching it to people that was born like millennials, and I said, yeah, and then we have Carl and Jaya, and they are a branded couple. They just go, okay. There was a complete different attitude change to that. So I felt that there's something about our times in this digital era when we are positioning ourselves in social media and so on that have changed a certain, look we have on love and relationships.
Well, you have so much in, I look at this movie as in 3 acts, essentially. You have that whole thing with the models and the social influencing. And I have to say, Harris Dickinson and the late, great Charlie was just fantastic in that. And particularly in a scene, the dinner scene, where it becomes this very beautifully played argument about who's paying. And did that come out of a real experience for you or something?
I have to. Yes, I have to admit it does. The thing that also happened to me and my wife in the early stage of our relationship, and it was interesting because I come from a Scandinavian background. I was brought up by my mother, and she always taught me, you have to be equal. A relationship have to be equal, otherwise you will not be happy. And my wife comes from Germany, and she comes from a more patriarchalic family structure. And in the beginning, I want to impress her, So it's I'm in a little bit of a corner as the man. So I'm paying for the first dinner, the second dinner, the third dinner. But all of a sudden, I feel I like her too much to keep on playing this role, because it's not going to be
you
possible.
like her too much to keep paying for her.
Exactly, yeah. And I feel like, okay, I have to grab the bull by the horn and bring this up, because I felt it was a sensitive topic. And then she says to me, okay, when I paid the third dinner, she says, thank you so much. Tomorrow I will invite you. And we were on a vacation when this happened. But the next day when we were sitting there at the restaurant, I'm starting to get nervous when it gets closer for the bill to come on the table. And when the bill comes on the table, she doesn't do like Yaya did in this shot, like that she's taking up the makeup mirror and happens to pretends that he doesn't see that the bill comes on the table. But the bill is put on the table, and she doesn't pick it up. And then the time aspect is much more painful for a man. I think all men can agree on that, right? So after a while, I can't stand it. So I just lean forward a little bit. And immediately she says, thank you, honey. That's so sweet of you. And I see my male ego, you know, like the person, like I'm completely like feeling, how do you say? Yeah, I don't feel like paying the bill, but at the same time, my male ego is taking up the wallet and putting the car there, and I'm trying to pretend like nothing have happened. I'm just like, please don't ask me how I feel now, or don't ask me what's up with me. And when she's asking, so what's up? What's up with you? I'm like, okay, you know, and finally, I don't have any choice but bringing it up. And it becomes like a roller coaster of a fight where you can tell it's gender expectations, it's the role of the man and role of the woman, it's the kind of exchange of money towards like beauty, all the topics that I was basically dealing with in this film was in that single situation. So when I was writing the script, I just felt like I have to use it. I have to put it in the film. But it was also a kind of beautiful moment because it happens exactly like it does in the film. You know, we walk home. Actually, we didn't go in a car, but when we go up in the elevator, the same thing happens. You know, I tried to bring it up in a nice way, but I don't manage, and it goes to the point when she pushes down a 50-euro bill in my shirt pocket, and I freak out. You know. And I feel completely castrated, and I actually pushed the 50-euro bill into the in between the elevator and the wall, so it falls down in the elevator shaft. Wow. And then I walk away, and I feel like, okay, I did the right thing. I stood up for myself, you know. But the corridor is quite long, so I have time to regret myself before I reach the room. And then I'm in the room and just like, where is she? And like texting, and finally when she comes back, we actually have a talk about these things that is on a level, you know, that can happen early in a relationship when you don't have any filters, when you don't try to play any role anymore, and it's not 100% sure that you're going to be together. So you actually you dare to be completely honest. And it didn't play out. It was not the same kind of topics that it was for Carl and Jaja, but it was also something that brought us closer. And the day after, we could laugh about it, a painful laugh, but we could laugh about it.
I didn't know when I asked that it was a documentary you were shooting there. That's pretty amazing. You know, there's so many scenes in this. You know, when you get to the yacht, which I understand is the actual Onassis yacht that was owned by Onassis, the Christina or something. You shot on that yacht and had this incredible storm, seasick scene that's wild humor, hilarious, and everything that goes on. And then some of them wind up on a desert island. So structurally, when you're writing a script like that, did you see the movie going in that direction, or did you have one thing in mind, like the desert island or something?
No,
like
I definitely knew that I wanted to have it in a 3-part structure, and I knew that I wanted to look on hierarchies, on the currency of beauty, first in the fashion world and then on the luxury yacht. And then I was very interested to put this character or some of the characters on a deserted island and like take away all the old hierarchies and look at like privileged modern human beings that basically don't have any practical knowledge about surviving, and then of course to turn around the hierarchies and put Dolly de Leon's character Abigail in the top of the hierarchy, and look at the power structure. What happens when you end up in the top of the hierarchy? Right. Because I understand her also, you know, like I fish and I have a lot of responsibility for this group. Shouldn't that give me some kind of advantage? You know, and there's a lot of things that comes with power and, how to say, the abuse of power or the use of power that I think that you can create a certain kind of understanding that, like, if you have a very strong hierarchy and you are in the top of a structure, then how us humans basically start to abuse our power. And I didn't want it to something that an explanation model that it's about the sex that is doing it, like that the men are doing it more than women. I wanted to raise the question: is it maybe the structure in itself that creates this behavior? And
Carl's sleeping with her to get an advantage on getting pretzels and things.
Yes, so. Exactly. And I was in love when I was writing the script. I was in love with this line: "I love you, you give me fish." I thought it was, and it's very often like that when I'm working with a script. You know, I fall in love with some lines, and I can't wait to get to that moment when I get to direct this scene. And can I make them say this in a believable way? And yeah.
This is your first English language film, but the casting, it's truly international. These wonderful actors here. I'm wondering, in putting the cast together, Dolly DeLeon as Abigail is just fantastic in this movie. She really is. But they're all great. The actor that plays Dimitri is fantastic in this. And then you get Woody Harrelson, who's very well known here. Across the board, this kind of casting, how difficult it is to put the kind of cast you envision here together?
Well, okay, I want to be humble, but you know, when I set the goals with working on a film, I always try to, explain what we're aiming for. For example, when I was talking to the casting director, I said, I want to create the Real Madrid ensemble. So, like, really, okay, we are going to take the best actors from different parts of the world and create an ensemble that is working really well together, that is dynamic, that is fun to look at, and that brings in energy in the right way, and so on. A colorful palette, basically. And we were in the Philippines, in Manila, we were in Europe, in all the bigger towns in Europe, and we were in New York and LA, and and what I'd like to do when I'm doing casting, because I'm also participating in the casting, that is that I play the different characters and do improvisations with actors, and casting sessions that is quite long often. So I don't want to put any pressure on the actor. I want them to dare to do mistakes, dare to take risks, and trying to figure out, okay, what happens if this guy is going to play this character? And so often it comes like ideas when you try out different actors, if they just dare to like lean back and make sure that they are there with themselves. Like, for example, when we were working with Zlatko Buric that plays Dimitri. From the beginning, I was thinking that I should have a much more tough Russian oligarch that was like in a complete different way than he played it. And when he played it, he just played it like a warm-hearted figure that was very frank about his background and in a very, how to say, give a lot of energy to me when I was working with him. So that took me in a different direction than I thought from the beginning. So I try to be open and try to be really see every single actor that we are trying out.
Yeah. You are a very unique director. When I saw this movie, I walked out and I told somebody, God, I wish Billy Wilder was alive to see this movie, because he would have loved it. You know, it reminded me of those greats. I'm wondering, you know, the satire, everything, the tone, to keep the tone of this is like a whole half-hour discussion right there. But did you have any film inspirations going into this? I mean, people that you looked up to and I said, you know, this is missing and I want to do this kind of film.
I think that there was one critics that wrote when they saw The Square that I was a mixture between Mikael Haneke and Larry David. And I was very, that I felt like, wow, I'm proud when he's writing this. And you know, when I was doing, already when I was doing Force Majeure, I had a feeling of there's a possibility to combine the best part of the American tradition in filmmaking, because you have such a great connection with the audience. And the European tradition of filmmaking, we have a problem with one thing, and it is because that we are state-founded. And when we are state-founded, when we get the money as a production company, we are already economically safe. So the downside of that is that we don't punch as hard in order to reach the audience. So I had a feeling when I was starting to make Force Majeure that the European cinema have lost connection with the audience. And I looked back on filmmakers like Buñuel, for example, that was like wild and entertaining, and at the same time they was trying to provoke questions and raise questions. And so I wanted like to try to get closer. I felt myself that I was much more of like an art house genre filmmaker almost. And I wanted to move closer to be free as a film director. I wanted to not have aesthetically like formalistic dogmas that I was leaning back on. And So when I did Force Majeure, I really wanted to combine these two traditions and get closer to what I felt that some wilder filmmaking that I could get inspiration from the 70s. And I have to tell you about an experience that I had at that time. It was a friend of mine. He was on the flight between, it's not between Venice, but after Venice Film Festival, then the whole industry is going to Toronto Film Festival. And he was on the flight with the whole, like his colleagues and so on. And a lot of European people from the industry. And he was a little curious, what are they looking on the screens when they are flying over the Atlantic? And he saw that we are basically not watching our own films. Everybody was watching Adam Sandler. And I mean, Adam Sandler is great, so it's nothing about that. But I thought it was symptomatic that we're not watching our own films. So I wanted to have an approach that we're creating a certain kind of cinema that is making a wild, entertaining roller coaster ride at the same time, like we want to click on it actually. And that we, at the same time, we are raising questions and so on.
Well, I have to say you succeeded beyond anybody's wildest dreams here. 2 Palme d'Or so far in your career and much acclaim. Thank you for coming out here to Film Independent. Thanks for joining us. I have to let him go because he's got to be somewhere else, but I know he wanted to talk to you guys. Thank you guys for coming out today, too.
Thank you so much. Thank you.